This is Chris, Idaho Painter, and I've got Sherry with me here from Unita. And you need to match the scratch, and that's what this is all about. So we're going to be talking about how to get the perfect finish on a painted cabinet door. There can be some difference when it comes to a stained and lacquered door versus a painted door. We've got our 3x4 sander here. This is the best sander you'll ever use when it comes to painting cabinets. And then all the abrasives that go along with it can be a little bit confusing, but Sherry's gonna break it down and make it very simple. So we have a lot of stuff. We have interface pads, we have pad savers. I don't see one around here, but we've got Film Tech, we've got Ecostorm, we've got closed cell sponges, open cell sponges, we've got Ecodyma sponges. Sherry, can you break this down, how we would sand this door and make it simple and easy to do for our viewers?
Sure. So this is basically a shaker door with a profile inside. So with the shaker door, that's perfect for the 3x4 because that means I can get in corner to corner, right?
Right.
The fastest way that I found to be able to do this is with the 10mm, right? The 10mm is nice because it keeps me up above the wood. If I bump the sander into the wood, I don't do any damage versus the 5mm. And the 5mm is fine on flats, but this is just a better situation for the 10mm. But what we want to do is we want to sand the 10mm, and with a painted door, you want to start with a fine, right? We want to start around a 220 grit, 180 to 220 grit scratch. And the reason being is a factory cabinet usually has a clear coat on over the paint. Right. So we're going to, again, we need to take that back down. We need to get that shiny surface look off of it, and we need to put a scratch in it so that our next coat will adhere. So with this one, I'm going to go with the 10mm fine. I can do both the center panel and the rails and stiles with this, right?
Right.
So I'll just sand this real quick.
So I saw you do like kind of a specific pattern. You went around the square and you went side to side and worked your way up. I mean, is that best to do? Can I just randomly sand around?
You can randomly sand around. The reason I do what I do is because I want to follow that pattern because I want to make sure I don't miss a spot, right? So if I follow that pattern, I know I'm going to hit that spot. You know, and it's same thing with the rails and stiles. And when we're sanding on raw wood, when we're in a factory, you know, we are looking to take out cross grain. And so it's trained into my mind now to make that pass around the racetrack. So we call it, we'll go around the racetrack a couple of times and concentrate on the cross grain, right? So I kind of follow that when I'm doing in the finish room. When I'm sanding in the finish room, I just keep that in mind. Right. Now, this could be done. We could break out the 1/2 inch, right? You could take it with the sander and break out the 1/2 inch. For me, again, there's some things that I want to hand sand, and I just want to be able to do this real fast, right? And I can do that just that fast. It doesn't have to be an aggressive scratch. It just has to be enough for the next coat to hear. And so I just do the same thing here. I just do the same thing all the way around.
So...
Sorry, I thought I put this on silent.
Perfect time. I guess like I always thought you had to do this, but you don't have to do that. So, because I guess my understanding is all you're doing is just putting a scratch on there for your coating to bite to, right? We're not taking off finish. Right,
and that's a big misconception is people want to level. And this is not the area where we level. We level prior to finish.
We're leveling when it's bare wood.
Right.
Yep. So good information. So is this door ready to go now?
It's ready to go.
It's ready to go. So on the back side of this, because we always paint the fronts and backs to the doors, there's no like contoured profile. This is really like a shaker style door now. It's basically the same as the opposite side.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And you said...
the only difference is that because you're missing that profile, right? So you're just going to come in with this here.
So you do need to hit that side.
You do need to hit that because if you don't, you'll actually be able to feel a rougher surface there.
Okay. A lot of times, I don't even know what people are talking about when I'm learning something new. You said rails and stiles.
Right.
What's a rail and what's a stile?
Rails, stiles.
Yep, so here's your rail, here's your stile.
Right.
I mean, when I heard that term the first time, I'm like, what the heck are they talking about? And so I like to just point that stuff out. So if you didn't know, now you know what we're talking about when it comes to rails and styles. So also wanted to just ask like one question. You said something about orbiting and stuff. Is this an orbiting sander?
It is an orbiting sander, but it's what we call a direct drive. So it is orbiting in a circle. It is not. It doesn't have that random pattern.
Okay.
In the past, square sanders were vibrating sanders. So what would happen is you'd put them in and they were just moving up and down, right?
Okay.
And so you would get a very uneven scratch. With the orbital sander, we actually do get a very uniform scratch. It's a much better scratch.
Okay, and it's not a random orbit sander, right? Okay.
No.
And one other question I want to ask you, this does have a plus and a minus, so you can adjust the speed of the sander, and then it has a minus in the middle, but that's the on-off button. Do you ever mess around with
I do. Sometimes I do mess around, depending on what we're sanding. So if we were at a cabinet shop a couple weeks ago, and we got into a situation where we needed to be a little less aggressive on MDF or HDF doors, right? And so we actually turned the speed down a little bit on a pneumatic sander because it's variable speed. Same thing with this. We can turn it down a little bit and it gives us a nice even surface.
Right.
The only time I really turn it down is when I'm running on HDF or MDF because I need that to be burnished.
Because I know it's like I always run it at full speed, but there was one time I was messing around and experimenting with it, and when I started to turn it down, I started to see swirls. Is that typical?
Normal. That's typical. And the one thing with the 3x4, and if you go back to some of our other videos, we talked about that non-woven, the Unilon pad that will take out swirls. These sanders are, because they are a direct drive, they are indicative of swirls. So it's really, with the sponge, it is a lot less if you're using the right sponge on the right substrate. And that's the big thing, is that if you use a 1/2 inch, you're probably going to get the swirls, but the 10 millimeter and 5 millimeter, you shouldn't see it much in the finish.
Yeah, and I know if you do see swirls now before you refinish it, I know there's a time I was painting some white doors, I could see the swirls in the right light, and I'm like, oh, the paint's just going to fill it right in. Don't go down that path, because it's not going to fill it in. You will see the swirls. You got to get the swirls out before you recoat it. So there you have it. We've got the scenario, how to properly sand a painted door. Now we're going to talk about how you go about prepping and sanding a bare wood door. So if you want to see that and get some tips and tricks on how to do a bare wood door, stay tuned for this video right here on Paint Life TV.